The hall went silent. Glasses froze midair, and the man who once mocked a woman for being barren stood speechless as she walked in, holding the tiny hands of 4 beautiful toddlers. Every eye turned. His pride cracked right there in front of everyone. He had invited her to his baby shower to humiliate her. But life had other plans. This is the story of a man who played with another's pain, only to be humbled by a miracle he never saw coming. Before we continue, let's know where you're watching from. Also, like the video and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.
The air inside the elegant event hall shimmered with laughter, glass clinks, and the soft scent of roses. The banners read, "Welcome, Baby Coleman Jr." Though tonight, it wasn't just about celebrating a child. For Derek Coleman, it was about celebrating a win. He stood at the center of the glittering room, perfectly dressed in a navy blue suit, his smile wide and rehearsed. Guests hovered around him and his wife Melissa, taking pictures, sipping champagne, and praising their perfect life. Every inch of the baby shower was meant to impress. Crystal centerpieces, live saxophonist, designer cake taller than a toddler. But behind Derek's easy laughter hid something smug and ugly. Because tonight, he had invited someone special, not to honor, but to mock. Tanya, his ex. The woman who had once loved him beyond measure. The same woman he'd left behind because she couldn't give him a child. They had tried everything back then. Doctors, prayers, tears. But when the hope of conceiving faded, Derek's affection did too. He left, telling himself he deserved a complete life. And now that Melissa was pregnant, he felt fully vindicated. He'd mailed that invitation to Tanya 2 weeks earlier, smiling as he wrote her name. "Let her see what she missed," he'd said to Melissa. Melissa, with her painted lips curling, had replied, "If she shows up, she'll know what she lost." So Derek waited, certain she wouldn't resist the temptation. "She's too proud to ignore me," he said smugly, as he poured himself a drink. But pride wasn't what guided Tanya anymore. Outside the event hall, headlights glowed softly as a sleek black SUV stopped at the entrance. The driver stepped out quickly to open the door. Tanya emerged, calm, radiant, and graceful, in a simple pale blue dress that flowed with each step. The years had been kind to her. She looked peaceful, content, untouched by bitterness. And walking beside her, clutching her hands, were 4 little children, bright-eyed, laughing, dressed in matching pastel outfits, each about 18 months old, wobbling slightly, but determined to keep up. Her quadruplets. The crowd near the doorway gasped as she approached. For a moment, even the chatter inside faded as whispers spread like ripples across the room. Tanya's heart beat fast, but her expression never wavered. She wasn't here for revenge, just to show that what's impossible for man isn't impossible for God. Inside, Derek was in mid-toast when the hall doors opened. The murmurs began immediately. Every head turned. The music stumbled into silence. And there she stood, Tanya, holding 2 of her toddler's hands, the other 2 toddling beside her, their laughter filling the space like a melody no one expected to hear. Derek froze. The glass in his hand slipped, shattering against the marble floor. Melissa turned toward him, confused. "Who is that woman?" His voice barely left his lips. "Tanya." And in that instant, the proud man who once mocked her realized the real show wasn't his baby shower. It was her entrance. For a long, breathless moment, no one in the grand hall moved. The only sound was the faint giggle of one of the toddlers tugging at Tanya's dress. Derek stood frozen,
a man whose pride had just been quietly stripped bare. Melissa blinked, confused by the sudden silence and the stares around them. "Who is she, Derek? Do you know her?" He swallowed hard. "She's someone I used to know." But Tanya had already begun walking forward, each step calm, steady, unshaken. The children toddled alongside her, one holding a small stuffed toy, another clutching her fingers tightly. Their innocent laughter filled the room like light through a window after a storm. As she approached, the whispers grew. Some guests leaned toward each other. "Those are her children? Wait, aren't those 4? Weren't she and Derek?" Derek's chest tightened. He felt every glance, every question, every unspoken judgment pressing down on him. When Tanya reached the couple, she stopped a polite distance away and smiled gently. "Congratulations, Derek. And to you too, Melissa. It's a beautiful celebration." Her voice was calm, but something in her tone carried quiet strength, the kind that comes only from pain survived and peace reclaimed. Melissa forced a smile. "Thank you. And these are my children," Tanya said, crouching slightly as one of the toddlers reached for her necklace. "All 4 of them." There was a soft gasp from the crowd. Derek's throat went dry. "Your children?" he stammered. "Yes," Tanya replied simply. "Quadruplets, 18 months old." Her words fell into the room like pebbles into still water, small, soft, but rippling endlessly. For the first time that evening, Derek couldn't speak. The man who'd built his image on control and confidence stood there speechless, his perfect smile gone. Melissa shifted uncomfortably, her smile faltering. The guests, unsure whether to look away or keep watching, stayed frozen in the awkward silence. Tanya looked around the decorated hall, the flowers, the lights, the laughter that had suddenly dimmed. For a moment, she remembered the past. The nights she and Derek had spent praying for a child. The tears she cried when every test came back negative. The day he left, saying he needed to move on with his life. She had begged him to stay. He hadn't even looked back. It had taken her a long time to rebuild herself after that, to stop measuring her worth by what her body couldn't give and start living again. She had moved away, started a small business, and focused on healing. Then, one morning, the call came from her doctor, a second opinion, a new discovery, a miracle she didn't expect. 4 heartbeats, the doctor had said with a smile. "You're carrying 4. Tanya had cried for hours, not from fear, but gratitude. And now here she was, standing tall in front of the man who once called her barren, surrounded by the living proof that her life was never empty, only waiting. Derek finally found his voice. "Tanya, I didn't know." She nodded softly. "You didn't wait long enough to find out." Her words were not bitter, just honest, and that made them sting more than any insult could. One of the babies tugged her dress again, and she bent down with a warm smile. "Yes, sweetie?" The little girl pointed at the decorations and laughed, clapping her tiny hands. Tanya chuckled softly. "Pretty, isn't it?" Then she stood, straightened her back, and looked Derek in the eye. "You should enjoy your evening. I didn't come here to cause a scene. I came because you invited me." And before he could respond, she turned and guided her 4 children toward an empty table near the corner of the hall, their small steps echoing like soft thunder in the quiet room. The celebration had lost its rhythm. The music played softly, but the room's energy had shifted entirely. Laughter had turned to whispers, and admiration had turned to curiosity. At one table, guests leaned close, murmuring, 4 kids?
That's incredible. I thought she couldn't have children. He invited her here? What was he thinking? Every word hit Derek like a pebble against glass, tiny cracks spreading through the perfect image he had built for himself. Melissa tried to keep smiling, but her eyes were sharp with embarrassment. "Derek," she hissed quietly, "everyone's talking. Do something." He straightened his tie, pretending composure he didn't feel. "I'll handle it," he said, though his voice wavered. Across the room, Tanya sat at her table, feeding one of her babies, while another tugged at her sleeve. Her face glowed with calm. Guests who once avoided her in the past, when Derek had painted her as the barren ex, now approached her with admiration and disbelief. "You're a strong woman, Tanya," one lady said. Tanya smiled warmly. "I'm just grateful. These little ones remind me that everything happens in its time." Every sentence, every soft word she spoke was like a mirror held up to Derek's pride. He watched from across the room, unable to look away. When dinner was served, the host, Derek's old friend and business partner, took the microphone. "Let's raise a toast to new beginnings," he announced, smiling, "to life, love, and miracles in all their forms." The crowd clapped lightly. Then he turned toward Tanya's table. "And speaking of miracles, I think we've all just witnessed one tonight. Tanya, your children are beautiful." Applause rippled through the room. Tanya smiled humbly, nodding in appreciation. Derek's stomach knotted. He could feel eyes flicking between him and Tanya, between the man who once mocked her and the woman now glowing with quiet dignity. Melissa leaned in close again. "You planned to embarrass her, and now look at you. You're the one who looks like a fool." He said nothing. His face was tight, his throat dry. After dinner, a few guests gathered around Tanya. "How do you manage 4?" one woman asked, laughing. Tanya chuckled. "Patience and prayer, and good help when I can find it." Derek found himself walking toward her before he could think. The guests stepped aside slightly, sensing the tension. Tanya looked up, meeting his eyes with calm grace. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Of course," she said, rising from her chair. "Let's step outside." The two walked into the evening air, the soft hum of music fading behind them. For a moment, they stood in silence under the glow of the lights. "Tanya," Derek began, his voice low, "I never meant for things to end the way they did." She tilted her head slightly. "Didn't you?" He exhaled, the weight of years pressing on him. "I was angry, frustrated. I thought I deserved more. I thought you weren't enough," she finished for him. "Yes," he nodded slowly. Tanya looked out toward the quiet parking lot, her arms folded. "You hurt me deeply, Derek, not because you left. People are free to walk away, but because you made me believe I was broken." Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't look at him. "You told people I couldn't give you a future, and now look at my future. 4 of them." He swallowed hard, guilt tightening in his chest. "I know. I was wrong. I see that now." Tanya turned to him finally, her eyes soft but steady. "I didn't come here to make you feel small. I came because you invited me, and I didn't want to live in fear of my past anymore. I've forgiven you, Derek, long before tonight." Her words caught him off guard. Forgiven? After all the pain, she still spoke with grace? "Forgiven?" he repeated quietly. "Yes," she said simply, "because holding on to hate would only poison me, not you." She started to turn back toward the hall, but paused. "Take care of your wife, Derek, and your child. You're about to learn what love really means, not in the celebration, but in the sacrifice." Then she walked back inside, her 4 little ones running toward her with tiny outstretched arms. Derek stood alone under the lights, the sound of their laughter echoing in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something real: regret.
When Derek walked back into the hall, something had shifted inside him. The confident, boastful man who'd arrived hours earlier was gone. What remained was someone smaller, humbled, quiet, uncertain. The music had picked up again, but the celebration wasn't quite the same. Conversation still buzzed, but his name lingered in too many whispers. He could feel eyes on him, some sympathetic, others judgmental. His grand baby shower had turned into an unplanned lesson for everyone watching. At the far end of the room, Tanya sat surrounded by her children. The toddlers laughed, clapping their tiny hands, completely unaware of the storm they had walked into. People approached her with smiles and kind words. They weren't fawning, they were genuinely moved. Her grace had softened the entire room. Even Melissa noticed. She sat beside Derek, silent for a long while before finally saying, "You embarrassed both of us tonight, and not because she came, but because of why you invited her." Derek sighed deeply. "I know." Melissa shook her head. "You treated her like she was beneath you, and now everyone sees who she really is and who you've become." Her words cut deep. After the party ended, Tanya prepared to leave. Derek watched her from a distance, unsure if he should speak again. But when one of the toddlers dropped a tiny shoe, he walked over instinctively to pick it up. He knelt down, slipping the shoe gently onto the child's foot. The little one giggled, reaching out to pat his face. For a moment, Derek's eyes softened. The innocence of the child made him realize what he had thrown away years ago. "Thank you," Tanya said softly, watching him. He stood up slowly. "You're welcome." He hesitated. "Tanya, you really did forgive me?" "Yes, Derek, but forgiveness doesn't erase the consequences. I moved on. You should too." He nodded faintly, unable to meet her eyes. "You deserve happiness." "I already have it," she said with a gentle smile, her gaze drifting to her children. Then she looked at him once more. "Sometimes life doesn't deny us, it just delays us until we're ready." Those words hung in the air like a whisper of truth. As Tanya's car drove away, Derek stood in the parking lot, the night wind brushing against his face. The tail lights faded into the distance, and he felt the weight of every decision he had ever made pressing on him. When he returned inside, the once lively hall looked emptier, colder. The decorations, the lights, the expensive gifts, none of it brought comfort. Melissa was gathering her things, her expression unreadable. "You embarrassed both of us tonight, and not because she came, but because of why you invited her." She walked out, leaving him alone among the fading lights. Days later, photos from the baby shower began to circulate online, not of the fancy decorations or the couple's smiles, but of Tanya walking in with her 4 toddlers. People called it the miracle entrance. Derek's reputation as a proud, boastful man spread too. Business partners started keeping their distance. Clients grew cautious. His arrogance once impressed people. Now it repelled them. He wanted attention that night. He got it, just not the kind he expected. Meanwhile, Tanya's story inspired others. Her calm grace, her refusal to return cruelty with anger, became a quiet legend in their circle. She never spoke poorly of Derek. When asked about that night, she simply said, "Some storms don't come to destroy you.
They come to show you who you really are. Months later, Derek sat alone in his office late one evening. He stared at a framed picture from the baby shower, the moment he'd meant to showcase his triumph. Now it only reminded him of humility. He picked up his phone, opened a blank message to Tanya, and typed slowly, "Thank you for showing me what grace looks like. I don't deserve it, but I'm trying to be better." He never pressed send. Instead, he sat back, closed his eyes, and whispered to himself, "I thought I won that night, but she was the real victory."
Weeks passed after that unforgettable night. The story of the baby shower had spread quietly through the community, not as gossip, but as a gentle reminder that pride never wins. Derek had gone silent, choosing solitude over the noise of embarrassment. He spent more time with his newborn, learning the hard way that being a father was about patience, not pride. The world had already taught him enough. Now he had to learn humility. But far from that city, Tanya's life bloomed in peace. In a small town not too far away, she sat on her porch one warm afternoon, the sound of laughter filling the air. Her 4 toddlers ran barefoot on the grass, chasing bubbles that shimmered in the sunlight. Every giggle, every tumble was a miracle she never took for granted. She smiled softly, sipping tea as she watched them play. Her husband, Michael, stepped out from the house, carrying a tray of cookies the kids had insisted on helping bake. His eyes met Tanya's, full of warmth and quiet admiration. "You still thinking about that night?" he asked gently, handing her a cookie. She nodded, a peaceful smile curving her lips. "A little, not out of anger, just gratitude. I needed that night to remember how far I've come." Michael sat beside her, watching the children chase each other through the sunlight. "You handled yourself with so much grace, Tanya. I don't think I could have done the same." She chuckled softly. Grace was all I had left for a long time, and somehow that was enough. She leaned back, eyes distant but soft. "You know, when I left Derek years ago, I thought my story was over. I felt empty, broken, useless. But I kept living. I rebuilt. Then I met you, a man who saw me as more than my pain." Michael reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "You never needed fixing, Tanya. You just needed someone to see the light that was already in you." Her eyes shimmered, "And I thank God every day that He sent you." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of their children's laughter weaving through the breeze. 4 little miracles, each one born not from revenge or desperation, but from love, healing, and divine timing. Later that evening, after tucking the kids into bed, Tanya opened her journal, the same one she'd kept since her hardest days. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, "Life doesn't always give us what we ask for, but it gives us what we need, in its time, not ours." She closed the book gently, looking out the window at the moonlit sky. Somewhere deep inside, she felt an overwhelming peace, not just because she had moved on, but because she had learned to forgive without forgetting, to love without bitterness, and to rise without vengeance. Meanwhile, back in the city, Derek saw a photo online weeks later. Tanya, Michael, and their 4 toddlers smiling at a park. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, "She found her happiness, and I hope she never loses it." He turned off his phone and sat quietly in the dark, realizing that the truest kind of success was the peace he had thrown away. Moral:
The past can break you, but only if you let it. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's the door to freedom. When you stop chasing revenge, life finds a way to reward your peace.